Tesla Motors announced recently that you can now drive across the entire continental United States for free in their fully electric Tesla Model S sedan. As you can imagine, this was huge news. We are breaking the back of the gigantic oil and gas industry. No more oil spills, no more global warming emissions, no more sleaze nozzles like former BP CEO Tony Howard going yacht racing while covering the Gulf of Mexico in a fashionable oil slick sheen. Anyway, the main difference between the Tesla automobile and the traditional fuel injection engine is that one of these things was built for the year 1902 and hasn't been updated since. It's basically like driving around on typewriters. And here's the mainstream media coverage of the news of this groundbreaking electric car that could change the world. Not the most thorough coverage I've maybe ever seen. But why would CNN break into the middle of their iPhone spank bank coverage for something as unimportant as, say, the fact that scientists at IBM have created a high concentration photovoltaic thermal system that could maybe power the entire planet for free? Or that one scientist has invented a synthetic leaf that might save us from eating our own planet alive? It's not that our media doesn't want to cover these important news stories, it's just that there's a finite number of bright red breaking news alerts, and they used up every single one on the fact that the iPhone has a new color case.
Hi there, I'm Darren Howard.
And I'm Robert Nisbet.
And that was Lee Camp.
He was explaining how much coverage the mainstream media is giving to new innovations like the Tesla car.
And I love the way the mainstream media doesn't cover what innovations could save us from all of this nonsense that's going on. And that's, of course, why we have Radio Free Canada.
That's right. We won't be reporting on the lack of news on the missing plane.
And we have nothing to do with pop stars with bad habits or with royalty that should be introduced to guillotines.
Of course, one of my favorite rock stars of the alternate media, Abby Martin, has a bit to say on the obsession of the mainstream media on the missing flight.
So if you haven't seen it, check this out.
You would think that being the most trusted name in news means that you have the audience to back up that claim. But unfortunately for the geniuses running CNN, that hasn't exactly been the case. See, despite having access to over 100 million households in the U.S., last year saw the worst ratings for CNN's primetime lineup in 20 years. But thankfully, one story has finally turned around CNN's sinking ratings.
All right, good night. 1 week ago, that was the last communication from the crew aboard Malaysia Airlines Flight 370.
Every possible terrorist lead or every possible terrorist scenario has to be drilled down and has to be looked at exhaustively.
Especially today, on a day when we deal with the supernatural, when we go to church, the supernatural power of God, you deal with all of that. People are saying to me, why aren't you talking about the possibility, and I'm just putting it out there, that something odd happened to this plane, something beyond our understanding.
Well, you know how cable news works, don't you, Spider?
Yeah, good, true.
We got time to fill here.
Yes, because filling time should always be the #1 priority of any news organization. Listen, the disappearance of Flight 370 is indeed a baffling mystery and a tragedy for those on board and their families, and that's pretty much all that needs to be said about it until there's a real development. But it's no wonder why CNN and other 24-hour news networks are addicted to the story. See, last week saw an almost 100% rise in the network's primetime ratings, revealing to no one's surprise the true motives of profit-driven news. As long as the story keeps attracting eyeballs, CNN will keep shoving it down our throats. Facts be damned.
So this missing flight thing is starting to become the rolling joke of propaganda history.
However, it serves very well as a distraction for other important news stories that are getting totally swept under the rug.
What I'd say to people is when they really hype something up that they don't know anything about or really isn't that relevant, look behind the scenes. What's going on? What's the government, what are corporations trying to pull off while they're distracting you with a plane they don't know anything about?
Of course, there's the ongoing mystery of the apparent banker suicides.
Oh, yes, starting what? It was January, something like that?
Something
January,
like that.
February. We started covering this banker suicide thing. So it just so happens that all of these bankers were being investigated. Some of them were up on charges. They had vital information about the banking industry. But what happened?
Well, they seem to be suffering untimely deaths. What they call a, what's the word? An anomaly.
An anomaly. That is the word of the day today. So, you know what? Imagine us flashing the word anomaly up, smirking, and then giving you a clip like this.
Of course, the media is mystified. Check this out.
We have the 12th banker suicide, banker death, in just 2.5 months since the bodies have been jumping out of windows, allegedly, because they can't live with themselves. They must make too much money. And this 28-year-old, tragically, Kenneth Belando, just couldn't go on another day. Again, banker number 12, the 12th suicide in 2.5 months from 28-year-old Kenneth Belando, who, by the way, was linked to JP Morgan Chase and the massive London whale trading scandal, which cost Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan Chase over $1 billion. Now, of course, there's been 2 other high-profile, high-level bankers that have also mistakenly fallen out of windows here recently. One in London by the name of Gabriel McGee, and another in Hong Kong named Lee Junji. And Kenneth Belando making the third, number 3 to have died, and also the youngest, tragically, of the bankers to mistakenly fall off a building to their death. So the tally keeps building, and what's also notable about Kenneth is that he just left the firm, JP Morgan Chase, about 3 months ago. He was at his new firm, Levy Capital, since January, and really had no reason at all to kill himself. The death toll keeps skyrocketing. Again, these bankers, I guess, just have nothing to live for. And as the mainstream media and the authorities dictate to you and I, the viewing public, there doesn't seem to be any foul play. Outside of the obvious linkage to one of the biggest trading cover-ups and scandals in the history of America, which has largely gone unpunished. People like Jamie Dimon walking around scot-free and gladly taking billions and billions of dollars in taxpayer bailouts and free money from the criminal Federal Reserve.
Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan Chase celebrated the new year with a raise. A 74% raise, to be precise. Jamie Dimon got a bonus of $18.5 million over the next 3 years on top of his base salary of $1.5 million a year. That makes his total package for pay for 2013 around $20 million. Not bad for a guy who has overseen his company pay out about $20 billion just last year to settle several legal and regulatory issues. Congratulations, Jamie. Job well done. Now, in a report by analyst Josh Reisner of Graham, Fisher & Company, which is called JPM Out of Control, it reads like a rap sheet. You have Rosner takes mortgage abuses almost entirely out of the equation.
Yeah, so it's like this 45-page report that they took mortgages out of. Like they're saying, okay, we're going to leave the mortgage issue over here because it would be a 150-page report. And the interesting thing about this report is, remember, these are things that they basically already admitted to, these crimes, at least in the sense of like reaching a settlement or giving out captured regulatory structure to an end result.
Yeah, these are things, just to be clear, the things on this list are things that are backed up with not just circumstantial, but some sort of data that at least suggests that they took place and that during negotiations with the U.S. government for these sort of deferred prosecution, these issues were brought up in those.
Yes, and Josh Rosner was quoted as saying, "We could not find another systematically important domestic bank that has recently been subject to as many public, non-mortgage related regulatory actions or consent orders."
So just so you understand how we had to pick, which one should we pick? This is the list.
Yeah, that's a page worth of infractions.
It's a page worth of infractions.
I like these shows. I'm so relaxed today, man.
Yeah, it's a beautiful day here in Western Canada.
We're at Kasugi Park. It's one of the most beautiful parks that there is in Kelowna. Of course, it was created by the Japanese. We have a government that plants some grass and puts up a park bench, and they call it a park.
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
But they're calling it the news. That's what they're saying, is that is major media is actually covering the news. JP Diamond there.
Well, you know, they are controlled by corporate and state entities.
Yes.
They have a different way of controlling the press in the Ukraine, apparently, though. Take a look at this photo, this footage from the from whoever. I'm not quite sure who shot the footage, but I kind of screwed that up. I kind of screwed that up.
Take two. And that's funny because you know I'm going to leave a bunch of that in, right?
That's okay.
We mess up. We don't care. It's corporate radio,
Hey, we're
right?
two random guys with a video camera.
That's right. Doing a better job than some other guys who get paid salaries to. I'm not sure exactly what they do. Okay. In the Ukraine.
This gentleman from the Ministry of Free Speech and Freedom of the Press had a little altercation with the CEO of the state-run media in Kiev. Take a look at this.
Ukraine has a bit of a tradition when it comes to government brawling. And that apparently extends beyond the walls of parliament. The man with the ponytail is Ihor Miroshnichenko. He's a member of the Ukraine parliament. In fact, he sits on the Committee of Freedom of Speech and Information. In this scene, he's paying a visit to the headquarters of Ukraine's state TV station with two colleagues and a small entourage of supporters. They're not here for an interview, though. They barge into the office of the station's acting director, Alexander Pantelemonov. They curse him, they attack him, and they force him to sign a letter of resignation. The reason? The station broadcasts scenes of Vladimir Putin's triumphant rally on Red Square after Putin signed a treaty to annex Crimea on Tuesday. Miroshnichenko and his fellow heavies are members of the Svoboda Party, a far-right Ukrainian nationalist party that sailed into parliament in late 2012 on a wave of opposition to pro-Russian President Viktor Yanukovych. A year later, Svoboda joined with a massive street protest that swept Yanukovych from power. WSJ's Paul Soni and James Marson report that since then, Svoboda has become more powerful than ever, with 4 cabinet seats, including defense minister and deputy prime minister. Its presence in Ukraine's political scene is creating a problem for the nascent government. Russia has used the threat of attack against ethnic Russians by Ukrainian ultranationalists as justification for its incursion into Crimea. And scenes of high-profile thuggery like this could help legitimize those concerns, if not provoke further Russian aggression into Ukraine. This is the Forum Bureau, WSJ's Global News Update.
And apparently the gentleman with the ponytail in that clip used to be a sports writer. Now he's a minister of free speech.
And, you know, pretty aggressive stuff there for the Ukraine.
It's a different way of controlling the press than we have here. A little more direct, I think.
We ran a clip on a congressman down in the United States who threatened a reporter for going off of script. And, of course, we have Stephen Harper right here in our fair country who refuses to take any unscripted questions.
Isn't he in Europe right now trying to tout the European trade deal?
And he's trying to oust Russia from the G8, which makes a lot of sense. Of course, we take a look at the Financial Post, I believe it was, who screwed up and printed G7.
Well, it's G7 plus 1, don't you know?
But that's why we're here.
Yeah.
I'm Darren Howard.
And I'm Robert Nisbet.
As long as they're lying, we're going to keep talking about the truth. And we're here to make sure that you have a propaganda-free look at the way the news is screwing up.
That's right. They'll continue to do what they do, and we shall continue to mock them.
Stay tuned. More coming up.
Hi, I'm Laurie Timble, and I'm inviting all of you to come down to the March Against Monsanto, May the 24th at the Parkinson Rec Center.
Peru bans GMOs. Peruvian President Ollanta Humala has ratified a law that bans the import and production of genetically modified organisms for the next 10 years. Introduced by Congressman Jaime Delgado, the bill was widely supported by agricultural organizations and the Peruvian people alike, with President Humala stating that the decision was made in response to their wishes and in defense of the nation's valued biodiversity. We respectfully applaud this new law, President Humala, Congressman Delgado, and all supporters. May more and more governments advocate similarly wise measures that protect the balance of life on our shared planetary home.